Hello and welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from TalkTV. So pop the kettle on, this is The Royalty. I'm Sarah Hewson. On today's show, we are discussing all of the fallout from this book, Omid Scobie's explosive new publication, Endgame, and how a so-called misprint has named two royals alleged to be at the centre of the royal race row. Joining me to discuss all of that and more are royal commentator and TalkTV regular Afua Hagan and Emily Andrews. Now, a Dutch publisher has said it is investigating how thousands of copies of Omid Scobie's new book, Endgame, ended up printing the names of two members of the royal family accused of raising questions about Archie's skin colour. The copies on sale in the Netherlands have been pulled and pulped, but the question remains how this could have happened, with Scobie himself insisting he never submitted a version naming names. And that's the big question really here, Afua, isn't it? How did this happen?
And that's what everybody wants to know. And at this point where we are today, right now, we don't know. So Omid Scobie has said himself that he never submitted a version anywhere that had those names in it. But that has ended up in the hands of the Dutch publisher. Now, we also have to point out that he will work with the English publisher on the book and an English editor, and the publishers around the world, they will work separately to him. So the only way I could think, and this is just me, I don't have any information or clarification on this, but the only way I think that this could have happened is perhaps it was written down somewhere in an old version, perhaps, and that made its way accidentally to the Dutch publisher and made its way into publication without it being taken out, and perhaps it got taken out in all the other versions bar that one, and it was a genuine mistake, and it got in there and got out into the public domain. That's the only way I could think that would happen.
I mean, your theory there, Afua, is you know, mistake, cock-up here, really. Initially, it was being described as a translation error, but we've all seen
not that. It's
the Dutch version
not.
versus the English version. There's no way that this is an error
The
of
punctuation
translation.
means that it could not be an error.
No, and
I mean,
in fact,
it's a whole sort of paragraph that we don't have in
that
English
is not
version.
in the English version of the book. It's not a translation error. Afua has set out that, you know, potentially was a different version of this ended up in the hands of the Dutch publisher and has somehow been out there. But another theory being explored, Emily, is that this is all
deliberate.
A conspiracy, that this is brilliant for publicity around the book.
Well, I'm always of the school that is cock-up, not conspiracy. Personally, I don't think that Omid would have deliberately done this, or any other member of the publishing team, either he's with an American imprint of HarperCollins, or with any of the other publishers around the world who obviously translated the English original and then put it into Dutch, German, French languages. Because Omid knows, and much more well-paid people than me, lawyers, know that defamation law is very strict in the UK. The only defence to defamation, libel, if you write something down in a book, is truth. And you have to be able to prove what you're saying is true. So if you name someone and are accusing them of something very serious, and racism is, you know, defined as a defamation, a defamation category, then you have to be able to prove what you're saying. And so expensive lawyers would have, if there was an original version, would have said, no, take it out. So for me, that is the most likely explanation. There was an original version, there were names put in, somehow, somewhere, it's got through to, and it was never taken out of the Dutch version. I don't think that this was deliberately done. Having said all of that, the publicity, obviously, for this book has been amazing because...
And can I just say that when Spare got leaked in Spain a week early, it didn't hurt the publicity campaign around the book, did it?
No, but I think we should say about that was that Harry was furious. Harry was furious that it got leaked in Spain. Again, that was an error, I think, that it just got put on the shelves too early. And then, of course, it kind of derailed, as he would see it, the publicity campaign because it couldn't be controlled. But as a journalist, as a newspaper professional, I'm not sure that even someone as famous as Harry or, you know, any celebrity in the modern age can tightly control a PR machine, even however carefully you've prepared it. And so once things are out there, that's it. I mean, certainly the publicity behind this book has been very tightly controlled. There have been NDAs signed, you know, access has been very, very carefully controlled.
Journalists here in the UK were not given advance copies.
They were not.
This was picked up by a Dutch journalist who had been given
advance copies.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because obviously the publishers and Omid wanted to very carefully control the publicity. Omid said himself that he doesn't want people to read the extracts in the papers because it hasn't been serialised here in the UK. A bit was serialised in American magazine People, a bit was serialised in French Paris Match, but Omid deliberately chose not to serialise it, and I understand that was his decision in the British press, because there have been ad hominem attacks on him.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go either way. You can say, well, wasn't he expecting that? You know, he's been very vituperative and petty and rude about the royal family. So, of course, people are going to examine the author behind it. But on the other hand, if we're criticising Omid for ad hominem attacks on members of the royal family, very personal, and some people have said poisonous attacks on members of the royal family, we shouldn't then be criticising him.
And he's gone on this morning and done an interview today, just before we are recording this, Afua, where he's talked about the kind of threats that he has received, his father being harassed, etc.
By tabloid newspapers. He said he's received death threats. And what you never want to do is, I mean, obviously you want publicity for your book because you want people to buy it, but you don't want to become the story. You want your book to be the story, you know, that he's worked on, what he's written. And I think Omid is smart enough to know that putting those names in the book anywhere is just not worth it. It's not worth potentially being sued, libel, defamation, all of that. And also this furore that we have now, where you have had these two royals named, and obviously you're going to have sections of society that are absolutely furious about that, and it's just not worth it. So I don't think that this would have been done deliberately. He said he's frustrated about it, as are a lot of people this morning. But I just think, you know, this being out there in the way that it is now, in the way that it was exposed, I think is completely unnecessary.
Because actually, we don't know the context. We don't know. The Telegraph published earlier this year that there was a exchange of letters between Meghan and Charles, and that they had written to each other, and Meghan had expressed her concerns about unconscious bias. That's what the Telegraph had said. And if we go back one moment further in this whole sorry saga to January, when Tom Bradby pushed Harry when he was doing his interviews on Spare, about the accusations of racism in the Oprah Winfrey interview in 2021, Harry said, well, no, I never said it was racist, unconscious bias. And so, you know,
And Harry said, we never said it was racist.
We never said it was racist, it was the press.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say we were slightly splitting hairs, but what I will say is that as a white woman, a British white woman, I feel slightly uncomfortable talking about race and what is race and what is racism, because I don't have the lived experience of some of my mates and colleagues who don't have white skin. And so, actually, who is it for any of us to say what is racism and what is not? And the problem now we're discussing we're now discussing it, but we don't know the context. We don't know how it was said.
Exactly. And I think that's a really, really important point, in that whilst we're discussing, you know, who leaked what, and, you know, at the crux of this story, we're talking about someone's lived experience. And as a black woman, I might find something racist that maybe you, Emily, you're not really that bothered about, but it's down to people's lived experience. And I think it's very important that we remember that. Talking about someone's skin colour, some people will find offensive and some people won't.
This goes back to Meghan on the Oprah Winfrey interview, March 2021. We're 2.5 years ago. Where
Still
she
talking
talked
about it.
Yeah.
The concerns being raised about their unborn child's skin colour.
Yeah.
She wasn't challenged on it by Oprah Winfrey. We then had 6 episodes of Netflix. We had Spare. In neither of those publications did Harry and Meghan repeat anything about this. You mentioned the Tom Bradby interview. Harry was asked about it then and rode back from it. So since then, since earlier on this year, Harry said, we never said racist.
Well, as I understand it, in that exchange of letters, there was an agreement, or maybe Charles asked in the exchange of letters between Meghan and Charles, that Meghan and Harry wouldn't repeat these allegations that they'd made on Oprah. And that would explain, or maybe Meghan offered, we don't know because we don't know. And that would explain why in Netflix and in Spare it wasn't mentioned at all. And when, obviously, as you say, when as I said earlier, when Harry was asked by Tom, he was like, no, I never said racism, that was the British press. His excuse for everything.
But we haven't, and we have to say, we haven't seen these letters.
So we
don't know the truth.
Exactly.
We haven't seen these letters.
One's presumably under lock and key in Buckingham Palace, and the other one is in Montecito.
But I think what we can infer, and yes, definitely can infer, that it wasn't Buckingham Palace that told Omid about these letters. And we know that the Telegraph obviously published the story earlier this year, and Omid was obviously told about it as well because he has more detail, a little bit more detail than the Telegraph did, or perhaps he has printed more detail than the Telegraph printed, because we don't know exactly what was briefed to whom. But what I think we can definitely infer, is that it wasn't Buckingham Palace who was telling Omid and the very experienced royal correspondent to the Telegraph. It was Archwell, and it was Meghan and Harry. So on the one hand, you've got this situation where perhaps Meghan has agreed, or whatever, there's been an agreement between the two, daughter-in-law and father-in-law, that this very, very explosive and difficult and very tricky subject and allegations are not going to be aired publicly, and then they're going to try and sort it out privately, which is great. I think we all agree that's the way forward. But then suddenly it's been leaked from, I assume, Archwell, to bring it all up again. And look, is this the forum
we don't know where it's come from.
No, we don't.
We have to say we don't know where it's come from. And Omid Scobie is saying that he did not write those names in a book that he submitted anywhere.
I think we should be talking about, institutional racism in this country. And the monarchy is very much at the top of kind of our institutions. I mean, I can only talk about my personal experience and dealings with the royal household and Buckingham Palace. They do really care. And I don't think it's not just that PR game face. They've all had, 4 years ago, all staff had diversity training. Yes, there are some, in my opinion, entrenched attitudes, partly because of the age of some of the household and perhaps some of the family. But I think there is a real willingness to try and, not for everybody, but to try and learn. But maybe we need to talk about...
There are many people who say not enough.
Yes, not enough.
Not enough.
Well, that's the thing. This is a subject about racism, diversity, equality, where there's such a gamut of opinion that even if you do something or appoint someone, or you have positive, positive discrimination in terms of the very senior staff that you're appointing, it's never going to be enough for some people. But better to have those conversations. But I'm not sure that by saying X or Y, by making these, very personal attacks and saying X or Y said this and it was found very racist to me, I'm not sure that's helpful for the sort of discourse in trying to improve things. I don't know, but you might disagree.
Well, I mean, just let's be clear on this. There are two names named supposedly in the exchange of letters between Harry and Meghan in the Dutch version of the book. Piers Morgan has gone on television and said these are the two names named in the Dutch version of the book. And we don't actually know whether these are the two people that... These are even the people that Meghan's referring to in the Oprah Winfrey interview. And we're all talking somewhat in the dark here, aren't we?
Yeah.
But in terms of the royal family, Afua, you've talked about what they potentially might do next, considering the options. The King is in Dubai, attending COP28. The general modus operandi of the royal family around any of these scandals that have come up over recent years in relation to the Sussexes has been to get the heads down and carry on. We've got the Prince and Princess of Wales later on tonight going to be attending the Royal Variety performance. It is difficult.
And me. And
Afua.
It is difficult for them to get on with this, isn't it, when these questions have reared up again?
Yes, it is, because I mean, I've been one of those people on royal engagements shouting things at Prince Harry or Prince William, and Because my own personal opinion is that they should be accountable and they should be answerable.
And William did answer the question, didn't he?
He did.
In the immediate aftermath of the Oprah Winfrey interview.
With very clenched teeth, we are not a racist family. And therein lies the massive conundrum for the royal machine, because we've got Kensington Palace, William and Kate, you've got Buckingham Palace, Charles and Camilla. What do they do? Do they just ignore this? Do they say something? I mean, we've you know, over the last couple of years, this has been an issue that the royal PR machine has had to answer. The Queen, or rather, you know, Buckingham Palace very adroitly kind of coped with the Oprah Winfrey interview by saying, famously, recollections, they were very sorry if Meghan and Harry felt like this, but recollections may vary. Which was a very, very clever way of saying we disagree with what they're saying. I don't think that Charles or William, as the two most kind of senior royals really, taking this forward, will say anything. I think they will probably just let their work do the talking, because of course once you do talk about it or say something on the record, it just prompts more questions.
Well, what then about Harry and Meghan?
Yeah.
Do they need to come out and distance themselves from this book and what has been claimed in the Dutch version of it?
I honestly don't think that this is their responsibility at all. I mean, so...
Except the information probably came from them.
Well, do they need to say it? Do they need to come out?
Well, maybe
the
family
records and say
relations.
I mean, this information did not come from us.
If it didn't come from them, then yes, it could be helpful for them to say that. But everybody is talking about them and they are remaining silent. So this is something that, like we said, was in Meghan's letters between King Charles and Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. We don't know how people have the information.
Well, it's alleged to be
in those letters.
In the one version of this book.
Yep, 2 names apparently in those letters. We don't know how people have access to those letters that have now ended up in the book. But we don't know. We don't know.
You're right.
Like,
we don't know.
We can infer,
the basis of facts. We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know how that information ended up in the public. We can assume and we can infer, but we don't know.
Qui bono, who benefits?
And so I think for Harry and Meghan, I mean, people are talking about them and talking about their information, but it's not them sitting here with you and I saying, so-and-so said this about this. It's not them doing that. So I don't think actually at this point, I mean, they can come out and say, we didn't give anybody the letters, which I think would be fine if they wanted to do that. But I don't think they need to take responsibility for a publishing error, for someone outing these names on national TV. They didn't tell them to do that.
No, but things have got a bit... I mean, look, recently, things seem to have got a little bit better.
Yes.
You know, you've got the conversation with Charles and Harry on his 75th birthday. Oh, where did that information come from, Sarah Afua? I wonder, not from Buckingham Palace, because Buckingham Palace even refused to confirm that phone call happened. But you had that information about the phone call, you had the information, that detail that Lilibet and Archie, rather charmingly, had sung happy birthday to their grandfather, who they've hardly seen. And it did seem...
last week we were talking about a potential thawing of
Exactly.
relations.
Yeah,
What does this do?
Exactly. I think it blows it asunder, and that's a real shame, actually, because if we kind of try and take a step back, and it is really important to talk about these big subjects in terms of our, you know, constitutional monarchy and the institution. But at the end of the day, this is a family, and this is a family who, you know, are going to still be related to each other in 2, 5, 10 years' time. And you've got these 2 young children who at the moment don't know their paternal family, and that's devastating, I would suggest, particularly even before you throw in all the royal, you know, shenanigans and background and history that they, you know, have now, Archie and Lilibet. And so I think that this has absolutely blown asunder any chance of that invite to Sandringham or Balmoral.
And I think, as we've proven, we can't answer any of the questions around it. It has raised many, many more questions. It is very murky indeed, and it is not going away, no matter what anyone involved in this might have wanted to see happen. This is right back there in the headlines again. Should we talk about something else?
Please.
Yes.
Should we talk about the Crown?
Yes.
Because we've had the first part of season 6 of The Crown out, the first 4 episodes. Part 2 is due out next month, and the first pictures from it have been released, giving fans a glimpse of the moment that Kate Middleton caught Prince William's eye at a university fashion show. The Prince and Princess of Wales, as they are now, were students at St Andrews in 2002 when Kate walked down the runway wearing a sheer dress that for years after set tabloid tongues wagging. We've had the first half, as I said, of this, or the first 4 parts. The next part is going to focus on that early part of the now Prince and Princess of Wales's relationship with this infamous, famous, iconic image of a young Kate.
In the see-through skirt.
That apparently is what first attracted William to her.
I mean, I'm really looking forward. I thought the first 4 episodes were really well made and I enjoyed them. But I'm looking forward to, with all due respect, moving on from the Princess Diana story. And for some more history to be in there. Because I think for the first kind of 5 seasons, you had all this lovely history that was also contained within the series alongside the stories of the royal family.
And we kind of cantered through the years, didn't we?
And it was everything that was happening, politics and things like that as well. So I'm looking forward to having a bit more of that. Really looking forward to seeing how, you know, Kate and William meet, playing out how they're going to play out those university years, what they're going to get up to. And also, you know, them two and Prince Harry, you know, forming a really tight bond. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of that, definitely.
I think Meg Bellamy, who plays Kate, is going to be an absolute future star. I mean, I'm sorry, I just found the last 4 episodes of The Crown, oh my goodness, so mawkish. I mean, I loved The Crown when it started, and obviously I watched the 4 episodes, which the first 3 episodes centred obviously on Diana's last summer. That 4th one with the ghost, sorry, I hope I'm not spoiling this for anyone, but if you haven't watched it, I mean, oh my goodness, I was just kind of collapsing on my sofa.
Do you know what? I didn't find it as
mawkish.
Really? I didn't find it as mawkish as I thought I was going to. We've been talking about it for weeks beforehand. As a device, I didn't find it as awful. I mean, obviously, it highlights to us that this is a work of fiction.
Yes.
Yes. That was it was a good way of doing that.
Yeah.
So I just kind of, you know, I just thought, oh, my husband was like, what? Have we suddenly gone into kind of... He actually said, and I think he said something like, you know, have we gone into... French and Saunders territory.
When Diana's there telling Charles, I liked how you were
I left your tie or whatever.
How sad you looked and handsome.
You know, it just was like, that is ripe for ripping off in some comedic way. I just thought, oh my goodness, we've gone into some, you know, 90s comedic sketch. So I hope hitting the sofa. I'm with you, Afua. I mean, you know, the series finishes for good at 2005. It ends with William and Kate leaving university. It ends with Charles and Camilla getting married. So it does end on a happy, positive
And do you think
note.
that really is it?
Yes. Oh!
No.
Okay.
You think they'll go for more?
Yeah, I think they'll rest it, and they will.
They can't.
And they'll bring it back. But I think it won't be for a while. In 5 or 10 years' time, they'll be
2 weeks' time. The next 6 episodes, the remaining part of what is said to be, although Afua doesn't believe it, the final season of The Crown. And that is all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Afua and Emily. If you want to join in with the debate, please leave a comment and make sure you subscribe if you don't want to miss a single episode. We'll be back next week with all of the latest on the royal family. We hope you can join us. We'll see you then.